Esther Chapter 1. I won't do it in the truck, don't worry. Vayihi bimei Achashverosh hu Achashverosh hamolech meodu v'yad kusheva v'yasrimu me'ah medina. So we established the book as this is a book about Achashverosh, about his great kingdom, 127 provinces. Bayimei ma'im kishev l'melech Achashverosh al kisei malchuto asher b'Shushan habira. In those days when Achashverosh was sitting on his throne in Shushan, the Birah, whether you want to call it a fortress, whether you want to call it a capital. What's important is that there are only two cities, as far as I know, in the Tanakh, which are called a Birah, and those cities are Shushan and Yerushalayim. We'll come back to that. Bishnat shalosh l'malcho asa mishteh l'chol sarav v'avadav chel parasu madai afartumim v'sarei hamedinot lifanav. In the third year of his reign, he gave a huge party for his officials, for his courtiers, for the administrators of the Persian media empire, all the governors, everybody. Behar Oto. And why did he do this? To show off at Osher Kvod Malchuto, his great wealth. He displayed the riches of his kingdom, the splendid glory of his majesty. What does it start to show? It's a guy who is a little bit lacking in self-esteem. If you're super rich, you don't need to let everybody know. You're the king of the Parasu Madai. You need to show everybody your great wealth. So is this sort of a threat? Is this him showing off his? Is it? It could be a combination of different factors. And when that party, 180-day party ended, half a year party, what happens? Then he makes a party for 7 days for all the people who lived in Shushan. And he's very nice. It's for the wealthy and it's for the poor. It's for everybody in Shushan, no matter where you fall within the class system. This party is for you. Wonderful thing that he's doing here in letting the party. Now, the people there saw all the great wealth, but we didn't. So we're told there were hangings of white cotton and blue wool with fine linen cords and purple wool, silver rods, alabaster column, couches of gold and silver and marble, mother of pearl, mosaics. So all of the palace was over the top. Vashkot b'chlei zahav. And royal wine was served. There was tons of it in beautiful golden vessels. V'chelim mikelim shonim v'yein malchut rav ki ad hamelech. Right, so there's golden glasses as befits a king. And here you may know that when we're reading the Megillah, we change the tune from the Megillah tune, Vashko b'chlei zahav, to the Eicha tune. V'chelim mikelim shonim. The reason why we do this is the rabbis say that the vessels that were used by Achashverosh were the vessels from the Beit HaMikdash. Nebuchadnezzar destroyed the Beit HaMikdash about 50 or so years later. The Persians take over the Babylonian Empire, Cyrus the Great. Later on, we get Achashverosh. So Achashverosh would have the wealth, would have the stuff from the first temple period. And the rabbis are pointing to something which we'll see in a second. As there was a rule for drinking, no restrictions. There's no tap out. There's no point in time where they say the bar is closing. The king had given orders to every palace steward to comply with each man's wish. You can get whatever drink you want. Open bar. And by the way, there's also Vashti, the queen, and she also makes a party for women in the royal palace of Achashverosh. And this sounds right after the 180-day party, and now at the end of the 7-day party. Achashverosh is very, very drunk. Amar limuluan bizta charbodna bigta vavakta zeitar v'charcha shivat asarisim hamishartim epnei hamelech Achashverosh. He calls in his 7 advisors, his 7 eunuchs, and he says to them, what does he want? He wants Vashti to come out. He's shown off everything else that he has, but now he wants to show off his beautiful queen in her tremendously beautiful crown so all the people could see what a beautiful woman she was. Now, there's midrashic elements that we perhaps learned that it was only in her crown and she would be nude besides that. We don't see that either way. Clearly, it is. It's not a great moment, a great feminist moment, if you want to put it as such. It's not a great moment for women. She's only valued due to his beauty. And Vashti, what does she do? Vashti refuses. I'm not a trophy, not a trophy wife. I'm not coming there to just be shown off as if this is a pageant. And what happens for the first time of a number of times? The king gets very, very angry. So the king brings in all of his people, all the important people who know the laws. Amongst them were the 7 ministers of Persia, the ones who were closest to the king. The first in line to give to the Yevas. What should we do to the Queen Vashti, who has not kept the word of the king? The decree of the king is something we'll have over and over and again, but the decree of the king needs to be kept. And she did not. Rabbis later will say Muchan is the guy who becomes Haman. I don't know if that's true or if that's correct, but here in this advice, we could see a little bit of the Haman mentality. What does Muchan say? When Vashti insulted you, he insulted all men in the kingdom. All people. It wasn't just about you. In the same way, Mordechai will not bow down to Haman. Haman, when he was told of it and realizes it, he goes into full-fledged rage and anger, and he doesn't want to kill Mordechai, he wants to kill all the Jews. So maybe that's part of the reason the rabbis identify Memuchan as Haman. And he continues in verse 17, Pasuk Zayin, Ki yetzei dvar malka al kol nashim lavzot ba'alein beinein bo'omram melech Achashverosh amar lavi et Vashti malka lefanav v'lova. What's going to happen? All the wives, they're going to despise their husbands. They're not going to listen to their husbands because they're going to reflect the behavior of Queen Vashti, who refused to come. And this very day, the ladies of Persia, what are they doing? They're burning their bras. Right? What are they doing? It's going to be the end of the male control of their wives, etc., etc. And therefore, if it please you, your majesty, let a royal edict be issued by you, and let it be written in the laws of Paras and Madai, so that it cannot be changed. We'll see in this book over and over again. Once a law is placed, it cannot be changed. The law has to be followed. And therefore, right, remove Vashti from the kingdom. Remove Vashti from the palace. Let her not be seen anymore, and let her be replaced with a woman who is more worthy than she is. Well, at least when I was a kid, we were told that Vashti was hanged, that she was killed. We don't see that. She's exiled. She's sent away. She's not seen anymore. We don't see more than that in the Megillah itself. In Ishma, Pitkam HaMelech, then will the judgment executed by your majesty resound throughout your realm? It's a very strong, very great idea, and all the wives will treat their husbands with respect, high and low alike. If you banish Vashti, all the women will be scared into submission. This is a good idea. And the king follows the advice of Memuchan. We're in verse 22. Dispatches were sent to all provinces to the king, to every province in its own script, and to every nation, that every man should wield authority in his home and speak the language of his own people. It's very nice. The last half of this verse, speak the language of his own people, sending it out to everybody. There's a certain sense in this chapter of acceptance of others. It can be multiple languages in a kingdom. What a radical idea, that there can be multiple languages in a kingdom and everybody should be treated that way. Submission of women. Of course, we know later on in the book, one of the ideas that, of course, happens in the book is how Esther is the one who manipulates Achashverosh into getting what she wants. But we see here that Achashverosh thinks that through decree he can get people to comply to his wishes. We see some other things here. Firstly, this is a book that takes place in Shushan. Shushan is the Birah. We said the Birah is Shushan, the Birah is Yerushalayim. Secondly, It's a book about parties. Doesn't seem very Jewish. There's only maybe one moment in the book that we could say sounds very, very Jewish. It sounds right only in the end of the 3rd chapter when Esther says, "Come and gather all the Jews and fast with me for 3 days." The rest of the book the story doesn't sound very Jewish. It's parties and parties. It's good to have a party. It's good to have fun, but it doesn't sound. It's taking place in Shushan. It's parties that are going on. But we don't see at this point. This is setting the stage. And let me mention one thing, which we'll see over again as we look through the book, as we continue, which is that this book we know doesn't mention God's name. This book also takes place in the palace or in Shushan at most. We say it takes place mostly. Okay. Now what we're going to see is the authors of this book, Mordechai and Esther, the way that this book is written, the way it is described, is that Shushan and Shushan Habira is the replacement for Yerushalayim. It's the replacement for Jerusalem. What we've seen so far is the word Bira. What we've seen is a lot of colors. So we saw that it talked about the white linen and the blue, the tchelet and argaman. We just had Parsha Trum, which describes the Mishkan and all the beautiful regal colors that are in there. This week's Parsha Titzav is going to talk about the beautiful colors and the beautiful jewels of the Kohen Gadol. And what the authors want us to understand is that the palace of Achashverosh is like the kingdom. The kingdom of Achashverosh, the palace of Achashverosh, is a replacement for the Beit HaMikdash in Yerushalayim. And we haven't gotten it fully. Let me just mention one thing. We'll see it as we go through the book. You'll see it more and more. A couple of other things that are going to go with us. Later on, Mordechai is not going to be allowed to go into the palace because he's wearing sackcloth. He's wearing ashes. Aaron, after the death of Nadav Avihu, what is he told? When after the death of your sons, we're very sorry. It's a terrible thing. But mourning doesn't happen in the temple. It's not a place for sackcloth and ashes. Further, we'll have another thing. If we talk about the Kodesh Kodashim, the Holy of Holies, you're only allowed to go. Aaron HaKohen, the Kohen Gadol, his descendants are only allowed to go in once a year when, in a sense, God says, you can come in. We know later on, Esther is going to say to Mordechai, I know I cannot go talk to the king about the predicament of the Jews because you can only go into the inner sanctum of the king, that is to say the Kodesh Kodashim, the Holy of Holies, if he calls you. And so we'll see one of the themes and one of the ideas in the book, and this is just setting the stage, is that Shushan Habira, Shushan the fortress, Shushan the capital, Shushan the palace of Achashverosh is like the Beit HaMikdash. It has the different halls. It has the parties, the same way the Jews would go up to Aliyah L'Regel, would go up and party in the Beit HaMikdash and come close to God and meet the other Jews and offer sacrifices. Now they're going to the house of Achashverosh, where they're drinking, and you can drink whatever you want. There's no meaning to it whatsoever. We'll see over and over again that that's one of the themes and one of the backdrops of the book, which we will begin today, and we'll continue with more themes related to that and other ideas to hopefully give a little bit more insight into Megillat Esther as we approach the holiday of